Directed by Alan Smithy, it's the IGN Digigods. Please welcome two guys who've hit the mic. It's Wade Major and Mark Kaiser.
All right, so we are trying something a little bit different today. First off, Corey, who gave us the Alan Smithy reference.
That was written by Alan Smithy. Oh, sorry, Lorenzo Raffa.
Well, you know.
He changed his mind at the last minute.
So, we want you to email us at gods@digigods.com and tell us how we sound this week.
We have these new little mics.
Well, they're
exciting.
They're the Samson Go mics. If they don't sound good, then I'm just going to return them.
Wait, how much do these cost?
That's a good question.
You're just not telling me.
I'm
You
trying
don't
to
want
remember.
tell the audience.
No.
You're a liar.
No,
you are withholding information from our beloved listeners.
What are they like 35, 45, something like that?
Wow.
Something like that.
Are you asking me?
They're like 30 or 40 a piece.
That's
something, maybe 45. Can't remember which it was.
Good job.
Anyway, no, I mean I'm looking to upgrade our microphone situation. You don't like to wear the lav. I do.
I do not like to wear the lav because I can't get up.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to get to a.
If you want food during the show.
Yeah.
How will a lav help us?
I don't know.
Accomplish giving you food, which I can't give you this week because all the food I have has nuts in it.
Try to put the mic so that it's a little more directional, so that because right now you're speaking out and the mic is below you.
Would you like me to put the mic farther away from me?
You can clip it onto the top of your laptop if you want. That's what that clamp is for.
This?
Yes.
What part of this is a clamp?
It goes like this, Junior. See?
Oh. This is real. This is quality podcasting programming you're listening to right now.
Yeah. So there you go. Oh, look at that.
How does that sound?
It sounds not great. For some reason, mine sounds better, but that's okay.
Hang on a second. How does this sound?
It sounds echoey. It sounds muddy, watery.
Because it's too far away.
Yeah, it must be.
What if I just put it down?
Well, see, now that's good.
What if I just put it down like this?
I feel like this is singing in the rain.
How about this? Is this all right?
Yeah, that works.
Is it better than me clipping it on the computer?
Oh, Don, because you know we go. It's the greatest scene ever. Anyway.
Well,
sorry.
Is this it? Are we doing it this way this week?
I guess we're doing it this way this week. We're doing it this way this week.
Okay. By the way,
we're doing it this way this week, sweet sister.
Okay.
It's a tongue twister.
Sweet back's badass song.
It's very echoey, but hopefully the listeners will not object. So carry on.
Okay, if it doesn't sound good, we shouldn't use these. Are you saying it doesn't sound good?
I just want to know.
Does it sound better than what we had before?
I don't know.
If it doesn't sound better than what we had before, and what we had before is perfectly convenient and fine, let's just keep what we had before.
Yeah, well, I guess. Anyway, yeah. I may make some effects adjustments or something here, but this is a whole new operation, so we'll do what we can.
Now, I did not see you last week in The Equalizer.
No, you sure didn't. How was it?
It's terrible.
Is it really?
Now, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Denzel Washington apologist.
I know you are.
Fan. He's my favorite of all time.
Yeah.
I will just see anything he's in. I don't care what it is. Preacher's Wife, I'm in.
Yeah.
Saw that. Don't care. Love Denzel.
Yeah.
This thing, it's like within 20 minutes, they're bringing in the cliched Russian gangsters. Like of all the people that The Equalizer, it was so bad. So it takes half an hour to get started.
Yeah.
Because they're establishing this relationship between The Equalizer and Chloe Grace Moretz, who plays a prostitute. And that half an hour is interminable because, note to filmmakers, just because you spend a lot of time with characters doesn't mean you're learning about them or investing in them. It just means we're staring at them for half an hour.
Oh, dear.
And then the Russian gangsters come in. And you're like... And then every time somebody died, I thought to myself, you just got equalized.
You know,
but he never said that.
Before we get into the DVDs,
it's very violent, which is good.
Yeah, it's fine.
No, it's good. Violence is good.
But here's my issue. They keep trying to take these iconic television figures and reinvent them for the movies in really kind of irritating ways. The first of those was, well, I'm sure there were others, but the first one that comes to mind is The Saint. Val Kilmer as The Saint, really? Simon Templar is an English guy. why do you cast Val Kilmer? And they didn't even make him Saint. There was nothing like the theme from the TV show. There's nothing from Leslie Charteris's creation. None of that was in the movie. It was just sort of like, let's just borrow this name of this TV show that most people haven't seen. We'll throw Val Kilmer in because he was Batman once, and hopefully people will go see it. It was terrible. It had nothing to do with it. There were so many great British actors who could be Simon Templar, and they went with Val Kilmer. Are you kidding me? Now, Denzel is a great actor, but is he the equalizer? I mean, the whole point...
There is no equalizer. It's a guy who beats up
but
people.
Edward Woodward as the equalizer was this older England. The whole point of it was that the equalizer was like who James Bond might be in 30 years. He's an older guy. He's a father figure. He's British.
Well, you have the older guy. You have the father figure.
Denzel's not old enough. I mean, you got to be graying.
He's bald.
You got to be graying, and it just isn't. He's not that guy.
Here are your choices.
It feels like Man on Fire. It feels like another Man on Fire.
I love Man on Fire.
I did too.
And Man on Fire is great, and you feel like he's doing. You know how like Liam Neeson keeps doing the same movie over and over again because somehow
Liam Neeson would be a good guy to play the equalizer in about 15 years.
Yeah, when he's 75. Liam Neeson's like 60 years old.
Yeah, so like when he's about 70, 75, he's really graying. He's a guy who could play that part.
They did that movie. It's called Going in Style.
Yeah, okay. But you know what I'm saying? It's like you gotta kind of play to the... I'll give you another case in point. You know what I did yesterday? I was taking a nap with the baby.
How is that like killing Russian gangsters? Taking a nap with the baby?
Absolutely the same thing. Precisely the same thing. It's just as difficult.
Wow.
Putting her down. No, I was taking a nap with the baby, and I thought, you know what? I never use my Netflix account. Damn it, I'm going to use my Netflix account, and I'm not going to watch something that I have to watch for work. I'm not going to watch anything for like I'm on NPR again on the 3rd. I'm not going to watch any ultraviolet things for the podcast. I'm not going to watch anything that no Vimeo screening links for NPR. I'm going to watch something that I damn well want to watch for the first time in like months. I'm just going to watch something for the hell of it. How often does that actually happen?
I can't wait to hear what you watched.
I watched the 2-part pilot for Hawaii Five-0 from 1968 on Netflix.
That's terrible.
And Cocoon. They introduced Wo Fat and the whole thing.
It's terrible.
It's fantastic.
It's terrible.
It's so good.
You're saying that because it's nostalgic. It doesn't mean it's good
No,
TV.
it really is good. It's damn good. And I was watching it and I was like, this is why the new Hawaii Five-0 just incredibly sucks, because they just said they grabbed some guy and said, yeah, your name's McGarrett. It's like McGarrett is a dude. He's got style. He's got attitude. He's got hair. He's got a whole thing going. Jack Lord was McGarrett. You cannot just plug somebody else into that part. You can't.
Well, they plugged what's-his-name into the part. Like in 1968, they plugged what's-his-name into a part. He just became that guy.
Exactly.
You just believed it.
Exactly.
And so...
And by the way, you realize that in that pilot, in that 2-part pilot, the guy who plays Dano is not James MacArthur.
Oh, my God.
It's the guy who plays the shooter in Jack O'Kelly or whatever his name is, who plays the shooter in Targets.
Jack Ruby?
No, in Targets. He's in Targets.
Oh, it's Frankenheimer's Targets. No.
The Bogdanovich's Targets. And he's the shooter in that film. And
seconds.
Yes, and they cast him as Dano in the Hawaii Five-0 pilot, and apparently people hated him, so they fired him. And he only worked for another year and a half, and his acting career ended. How sad is that?
That's not sad at all. He sounds like he sucked.
He was in Targets. He was the shooter in Targets.
What's his name?
It's like Jack O'Kelly or something.
Jack. Okay, talk about DVDs.
Okay.
No one cares. Anyway, Equalizer. It's very violent, and there's some stuff where you're like, yeah, get him Denzel because he's awesome. But generally speaking, it's really cliched and just long, and I was just rolling my eyes.
Well, there we go. So I got some classical music things that I'm going to blow through because Mark's going to make fun of me if I spend any time on this later in the show.
I'm looking up Jack O'Kelly on IMDb to see what happened to him.
Yeah, let's find out what happened to him. Because he probably became like a crack addict or something.
Is it Tim O'Kelly? Tim O'Kelly.
Tim O'Kelly, maybe that's it. Whatever it is. Anyway. All right, so we've got Puccini's La Bohème on DVD, not on Blu-ray. That's the one bummer about this. But it's an import, and this is live from the, and I'm going to do my best to pronounce this, Rommersteinbruck St. Margaretin in July of 2013.
He was in the Mod Squad.
Yes, he was.
He was in the Mod Squad, Medical Center, Gunsmoke, Batman. He played Royal Jester and Pete in Batman.
See?
He was in Shane, The Big Valley. and his career ended in 1970.
Isn't that sad? Anyway, so it's a nice version of La Boheme, but it's on DVD, so you don't get the lossless audio and all that wonderful stuff. You get a really, really super cool thing here. This is a Blu-ray from the Classic Archive of Ideal Audience, and it's just a collector's edition of performances by great conductors, and it includes Von Karajan and Muravinsky, Otto Klemperer, Leopold Stokowski. I mean, you know, the best thing that Leopold Stokowski ever did was when Bugs Bunny played him. Remember? Leopold.
Thank God that was a joke, because if you knew anything about Leopold Stokowski, I would have killed you.
I do. He's the guy who did the score for Fantasia. Performed it.
Go to hell.
Okay. Anyway, so lots of great pieces here. Brahms, Debussy, Mozart, Ravel, Shostakovich, Tchaikovsky, and of course Beethoven and Wagner, Bruckner, Stravinsky, Schubert, Mussorgsky. It's pretty great. Fauré, who's one of my favorite composers, a French romantic. The Berlin Philharmonic performing Waldbrunner. You know, I like
Wait, hang on a second. According to Family Search,
yes,
Tim O'Kelly's real name was Timothy Patrick Wright.
Yes.
He was born March 12th, 1941, and died January 4th, 1990.
All right.
So now you know what. Now you know what happened to him.
There you go. So Waldbrunner is a particular concert. Apparently, this happens every year, and they've got on 3 Blu-rays here a number of performances from 2009, 10, and 11. Lots of great stuff. Khachaturian's Spartacus and Phrygia from Spartacus is one of my favorites on here. Love it. Elgar's Salut d'Amour, Opus number 12. Fantastic.
I'm really glad we're starting the show with
Respighi,
this.
Shostakovich.
Really
It's good stuff.
Oh my God!
Hey, I'm burning through this, man. I'm burning through it. Another thing from the Vienna Philharmonic, 2 Blu-rays. This is Die Meistersinger von Nurnberg. This is an opera. You know, I watch a little bit of these operas. I never really understand the stories, but you know, there seems to be a certain verve going on at a certain point. Touching the Sound, The Improbable Journey of Nobuyuki Tsujii. 2 eyes at the end, even though there are no eyes in Japanese. I never know why they do that. How do they know, like, when to use 2 of our vowels?
How does who know?
In Japanese. You ever notice sometimes a Japanese name will have, like, 2 eyes at the end? How do you know? They don't have eyes in Japanese.
You know what? When I was in Japan, I learned a very simple way to read everybody's name and everything.
Yeah.
Just pronounce everything.
Okay.
Just if it's Takashai Mikei, yes, that's what it is.
All right. Well,
like,
anyway.
There's no, like, silent letters or weird, crazy vowels. Or
Nobuyuki Tsujii is a blind pianist. He's blind. It's amazing. And he is one of the great pianists in the world. It's really extraordinary. So this is a very touching story. It's on Blu-ray. Worth checking out. Merchant of Venice by Tchaikovsky. An opera in 3 acts and epilogue after William Shakespeare by the Vienna Symphony. Really nicely done. Really, really beautiful. That's on Blu-ray. That also worth checking out. Ariadne auf Naxos by Richard Strauss, the London Philharmonic on Blu-ray, also excellent. Really, really good bunch of stuff here, and we're getting down to something that I know you're going to enjoy as well. The Odeonsplatz concert. The Odeonsplatz.
That's great, Wade. That's great.
Odeonsplatz concert. Verdi and Wagner. This is lovely. I mean, it's a really cool location. It's an orchestra in Bayern Munich, and it's just really, really cool. And then there is Rossini's L'Italiana in Algeri, which is done all kind of weird, funky style. It feels very kind of Barbarella-esque. So that's it's Rossini. What do you want? And then this is the one I really wanted to recommend. This is kind of a really cool deal. This is Shining Night, a portrait of composer Morten Lauridsen. Now, Lauridsen is kind of a fixture over at USC, so me being a UCLA graduate takes something for me to actually say something nice about USC people. But I'll tell you, Lauridsen, if you're not familiar with him, he is a contemporary American composer who does choral music, and his album Lux Eterna is one of the most breathtaking things you will ever hear. He is truly one of the great modern composers of classical music, especially choral music. And this gets into who he is and why he is significant and It's just a wonderful documentary profile of one of the great living composers in the United States. It's only 73 minutes long, so it goes really quickly. And if you love sort of, things about composers, definitely check this out. It gets into Lux Eterna as well as Nocturne and O Magnum Mysterium and a lot of his other compositions. But he's a fascinating figure, amazing composer, and this is just really a worthwhile DVD to pick up. So definitely check it out. That is Shining Night, a portrait of composer Morten Lauridsen, Morten Lauridsen, by Michael Stillwater. Very good filmmaker. All right, Mark.
Anything else? I don't know.
There's other.
No, keep going. I don't want to stop you from talking about
no, never mind. Carry on. What else do we have on the music front?
Oh, actually, before the music
front,
performance.
Just performance. I see, but that's I wouldn't call him a singer.
Richard Lewis,
No.
Richard Lewis is a longtime stand-up comic, mostly famous in the kind of the '90s. But he is known for being one of those quintessential, nervous, neurotic New Yorker types. I actually produced Richard a bunch of times on shows back in the '90s, and actually there is something. I gave Richard, because I produced Richard so many times on shows.
Yeah.
There is a wherever he went to school, I can't remember where it was. They dedicated part of their TV and media center to Richard Lewis as one of the more famous graduates. And so I remember I was in the. I was talking to Richard. I was going over the show with him.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go over the show with him, I have my questions, the questions that the host is going to ask Richard on a piece of paper.
Right.
It's got my name on it. It's got Richard's name on it. It's got the questions on it. So when we're done, Richard says, "Can I have that paper?" And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because it might have been Ohio State. Because at my alma mater, they're going to have a collection of my notes." Ohio State. Look at that. I remember. Ohio State. They're going to have a collection of my notes, a collection of my writings, a collection of memorabilia and tchotchkes from my career and life, and I would like to have this included.
Oh.
I was like, wow.
Very nice.
Richard, here it is. Anyway, Richard Lewis. This is called Bundle of Nerves, and Richard is, he's 67 now, so he's getting up there, but this is a two-disc set that contains a lot of his stand-up comedy performances, starting in 1979 and going all the way up until 1997 and beyond. This is good stuff. Richard Lewis was one of the original Larry David-y types, and he did it great. He was neurotic and funny, and he bore his personal scars right there for everybody to see, and he was great. So if you like Richard Lewis, and you should, if you like stand-up comedy, check out Richard Lewis' Bundle of Nerves.
How about that Scotland?
You know what? Exactly. You know what?
Aren't you going to ask how I got from Richard Lewis to Scotland?
Yeah.
Because Richard Lewis is a stand-up comic, and you reminded me that I spent a significant amount of time late at night past few days just watching clips of Billy Connolly. And Billy Connolly's Scottish, and Scotland,
You know what I thought?
Just voted not to be independent.
I thought to myself, if they want independence, it's their life, let them have it, good for them, but they're going to hate it.
No, my description is this. Scotland is like that kid who's been living in his parents' basement for 305 years, and he is so excited he finally gets to move out and be on his own. And it's like, screw you, Mom, screw you, Dad. And then he realizes that he's now going to have to pay rent, and he's got to do his own laundry and cook his own meals. And suddenly the basement's not so bad after all.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
They made the right choice.
Well, it was the women, you know that. That in polls, men voted overwhelmingly to be independent. It was the women who were like, "You got to be kidding me." So it was the women's vote that actually carried it.
Once again, women are smarter than men.
In Scotland, women wear the pants.
That's right. Classic DEVO. The men who make the music.
I love DEVO.
Plus Butch DEVO and the Sundance Gig.
I love DEVO.
This is a DVD. This is live in concert from 1978, 1979, and they jump all the way up to 1996 for the Butch DEVO and the Sundance Gig. And this is great. It's got most of the famous songs that you know them for, and they wear funny hats because they're DEVO.
Love them. I've actually seen DEVO perform live at one of my 10K races. They were right there on the floor of the Coliseum, the LA Memorial Coliseum, performing.
Now,
they were
Mark
amazing.
Huh?
They were amazing. Mark Mothersbaugh, yeah, Simpsons theme song.
Yes. Anyway, Jethro
No,
Tull.
not Simpsons. No, that's Danny Elfman. No, Mark Mothersbaugh does. It was
SpongeBob or something like that. Was it SpongeBob?
It might be SpongeBob, but it was also Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Pee-wee's
Yeah, that's what it was.
Jethro Tull's Ian Anderson, Thick as a Brick, live in Iceland. Now, this is not Jethro Tull. Yeah.
Hang on, I'm going to pause. I'm going to try an effect just to see if I can clean up the audio. Hang on 1 second. All right. Is this any better? Does this sound any better? I don't know.
You're asking me. I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see. Okay.
Anyway, Jethro Tull is Jethro Tull's Ian Anderson. Now, this is not Jethro Tull, the entire band playing in Iceland.
Mm-hmm.
This is just Jethro Tull, who, as you know, is the flautist of the band.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still good stuff because he's still very talented, and the guy's a total survivor, and the guy rocks, and you gotta love it. And so there you go. Thick as a Brick was released in 1972, and he plays a bunch of songs from Thick as a Brick, as well as some other stuff there too. Good stuff. Lots of bonus material. I'm a big fan of anything Iceland, having been there and eaten their cured shark and dolphin. That's right, Wade. When I was in Iceland, I ate dolphin.
You're welcome to it.
Dolphin Carpaccio. Also, we have Queen, Live at the Rainbow, 1974. I love the fact that the great thing about these Blu-rays that they come out with, this is from Universal and Eagle Vision, is that you get these concerts that are like 40 years old, and now they're just looking great on Blu-ray, sounding pretty damn good, and a lot of classic concerts. Anyway, we have from the Rainbow Theatre in North London from 1974, Queen. Plays all their classic hits, including Killer Queen and guitar solo. I was looking at the back of the box to remind myself what they played.
Yeah.
And track 12 is called Guitar Solo. One of
sweet.
their most favorite songs.
That's probably Brian May doing just a guitar solo.
Anyway, no, they actually do Jailhouse Rock, which is
the Rainbow is just was a legendary place in the 70s and the 80s. I mean, that was like the rock place, and in the 80s in particular, it was for hair bands and metal bands. It's where Cinderella and Motley Crue and all those guys and their groupies would hang out. And what's interesting about that is, you know what the Rainbow used to be? It was like a really classy bar and grill back in the golden days. It's where Vincent Minnelli and Judy Garland used to hang out. I think it's even where they had their first date.
It's the golden days now, Wade.
Yeah, well, whatever. All right, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna try one more time. Hang on. So I don't think any of these audio switches, things that I'm doing, are making any difference. Okay.
Carry on. I was not a fan of Swedish House Mafia, which was the electronic dance music trio. They were only around for a couple of years. I never really liked their music, but I thought it was pretty fascinating, their film Leave the World Behind. Now, Leave the World Behind is a kind of a concert documentary thing that charts the band's final tour. Now, by all accounts, they pretty much broke up in order to save their friendship. And it's good stuff. Again, not a big fan of the music, but I am a fan of watching them interact and getting a sense. It's almost like a eulogy for the band. It's almost like they're playing their own funeral, in a sense, because they know it's going to be their last tour together because they're breaking up. So Swedish House Mafia on their final world tour, Leave the World Behind.
Yeah.
I liked it. Don't like the music, but I definitely like them, and I like this documentary. So
you're the man.
Now, Wade, here's the thing. I'm gonna mention to you a Blu-ray that I only want you to watch if you hate me.
Okay.
This is called Believe Tour Dance Experience. Now, Believe Tour Dance Experience, it's hosted by this choreographer and dancer, and what he does is he takes you step by step into all the dance moves that Justin Bieber did during his Believe tour. So you get Justin's dancers, you get Justin's choreographer, and the guy, they teach it to you, they break it down, everything that Justin and his backup dancers did when they were on their Believe tour.
Yeah,
so
I don't
there's
care.
tips for techniques to dance like Boyfriend and As Long As You Love Me and all sorts of crap-ass,
not so
BS,
interested.
ridiculous douchebag songs that horrible person sings and whatever the hell he does.
Not so interested.
And so it's called Believe Tour Dance Experience. Basically, I think I know what's happening here, actually. What's going to happen here is anybody who buys this, their name will be entered into a database, and they'll be killed. So that way we'll know who to kill.
That's actually very interesting. It's an interesting theory.
Wait, there's a band called Of Montreal, and The Past is a Grotesque Animal is about the leader of this crazy indie pop band. Actually, their stuff is kind of catchy. A little weird, but kind of catchy. Kevin Barnes is the leader of the band called Of Montreal. And, he is one of those guys who's just very driven to make music. He is so driven that, it costs him friendships and relationships. And it's kind of interesting. And the movie's kind of about, like, is it really worth the sacrifices you have to make to just so completely and overwhelmingly pursue your artistic dreams? And so it's got that interesting little thematic schmear there that I liked.
All right.
The past is a grotesque animal. It's from Oscilloscope. I wish it was on Blu-ray, but it is on...
just on DVD.
DVD. Some special features, including some live performances and some deleted scenes. But, check it out.
All right. So now that's music out of the way. Do me a favor there with your microphone. I'm just testing. I'm testing things. There's a little switch on the side. Do you see the switch on the inside?
I'm working on it. Hang on. Yes.
Pop that switch up. Pop it up. We're gonna take the dB enhancement off.
How is that? That better?
That might actually be better.
Oh my God!
It might be better.
Wow.
Yeah. Now you're a little loud. You're a little hot.
Oh, I'm hot, all right.
Okay. So anyway, a couple of things I want to make mention of real quickly because we're not going to talk about them on the show today. We're going to hold these for Halloween, but you should know that they are out this week. One is from Anchor Bay, the Halloween Complete Collection Blu-ray set. The complete collection, every Halloween movie ever in one set. Very impressive because you're having to deal with multiple companies here. And including, of course, Halloween 2, which has nothing to do with Halloween. And multiple versions of all of them. It's a big deal. So we're gonna talk about that for Halloween, and then probably also include mention of that in our holiday gift guide. And then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 40th Anniversary Collector's Edition Blu-ray combo is out. And we will be discussing that as well around come Halloween time. So we also have an interview today, Mark. We're going to end the show with a rather spectacular interview that we have.
We're done now?
No.
Oh.
Thanks
I got nervous. I thought we were done now.
Boy, you are really loud all of a sudden. That's weird. That was supposed to take the decibels off.
This could be our final show, folks, because you know what? This is very interesting what we're doing right now.
Okay. My goodness, that's suddenly really loud. I may have to MIDI you down or something. Can you be a little more restrained in your enthusiasm? Never mind.
I cannot be more restrained in my enthusiasm for my hatred of Justin Bieber.
Okay, good. But anyway, we got a really interesting suggestion some weeks ago from listener John Lusty, and he suggested that we do an interview with one of the guys or both of the guys who run the Warner Archive, and so we actually had a conversation, or I had a conversation with George Feltenstein, who is president of the Warner Archive and who co-hosts a podcast of his own, and as it turns out, is a faithful listener to this podcast. Which suddenly makes me feel like, wow, we're not just speaking into the ether. Important people listen to us, and I feel like I have to rise to the occasion. So it elevates our expectations of ourselves. But we had a great conversation with him, and there were a lot of questions that John had that I had never even thought of. And so I had a great conversation with George Feltenstein. And we will end the show with that, and fans of the Warner Archive will get a sense of what actually goes into the curation and the selection and the mastering of all of those amazing films, which otherwise would not exist. By the way, I mean, we often say on this show that it's a pity that something has to wind up on Warner Archive, which is not a slam on Warner Archive. It's sort of a slam on audiences for not, a lot of Greta Garbo movies. I'd love it if you could sell them to 1 million people, but there aren't 1 million people interested in Greta Garbo. Fortunately, we have the Warner Archive, which makes it possible for those who are interested in Greta Garbo to find those old silent Greta Garbo movies and get them on DVD, and that would never otherwise be possible without Warner Archive.
That's great, Wade. Thanks for inviting me to the interview.
You were invited. You were invited to be a part of it, but you're producing TV and things like that. Okay, new movies. I'm gonna crank through some new movies right now. One of them is called Last Passenger. This is on Blu-ray. This is from Cohen Media. It is not in the traditional Cohen Media packaging. Cohen Media usually releases their stuff in kind of a clear Blu-ray case. This is in a just regular generic blue Blu-ray case, and for actually a smart reason, because it's not an art film. This is a commercial film. This is actually despite a limited budget, It's really, really sharp and really suspenseful, and a really nice little Hitchcockian exercise. And I tip my hat to everybody involved. The director is Omid Nushin, British director, and it is clearly a resume piece for him. This is the kind of film that a lot of these guys in other countries make when they don't have a lot of money, but they want to sort of send a message to Hollywood that says, hey, if you're looking for somebody to direct a big $200 million blockbuster summer tentpole superhero movie who's better than Michael Bay and won't ask for Michael Bay money, hey, look over here. And I would hire this guy in a heartbeat. It is just terrific. Doug Ray Scott, who's a totally underrated actor, by the way, Scottish, plays a father who, with his son, they get on just a regular late-night train on their way home, and you think everything's just going to be sort of fine, and then suddenly it's not stopping. It's not stopping at all the destinations it's supposed to stop at. And he and some of the other passengers start to realize something is wrong. Maybe their train has been hijacked. And there are all these signs, these little telltale signs. And, of course, it wraps up in a great big kind of speed scenario, right? It's a little bit of speed, a little bit of, all those chase movies. But, man, it's really sharp. It's really, really well done. Not brilliant, it's very, very constrained, but considering what they were working with, man, it's really a sharp little film. So that's The Last Passenger with Doug Ray Scott. Definitely worth checking out. Also, The Calling with Susan Sarandon, who apparently can't really anchor big movies anymore, but this is a DVD of The Calling, which also stars Topher Grace, Donald Sutherland, Gil Bellows, and Ellen Burstyn, another former Oscar regular in the 70s. Remember, Ellen Burstyn was nominated like every year.
Oh, yeah.
In the 70s.
Alice doesn't live here anymore?
Remember in the 70s, it was like every single year it was the same actresses.
Shelley Winters.
It was Ellen Burstyn and Glenda Jackson and Jill Clayburgh.
Right, and who was the... I'm getting old.
Diane Keaton.
Diane Keaton.
They were like every year. They were all in it, either in supporting or actress, one of the two.
Louise Fletcher, of
course, certainly for Cuckoo's Nest. Anyway, Susan Sarandon here plays a detective. And Ellen Burstyn plays her mom, who rather a glorious drunk of a mom, borrowing a little bit from her Requiem for a Dream character, which I'm sure Mark just absolutely adores. But anyway...
I do.
Yeah, I know you do. Anyway, this is kind of a macabre whodunit thing, trying to figure out these murders, and Donald Sutherland plays a priest, which always amuses me. You can put Donald Sutherland into like, he could play a priest, he could play a nun.
He's cool.
He could just play anything.
He's the man.
It's a good little movie.
Yep.
And The Rover is one of my favorite films of the year so far. I thought The Rover was terrific. I am a gigantic fan of David Michôd. David Michôd, of course, was the... director of Animal Kingdom, and I thought that was brilliant. And he made kind of a gritty, somewhat near-future-ish, Mad Max-ish movie with The Rover, which is more constrained. Animal Kingdom is big. The Rover is small. Animal Kingdom has scope. The Rover is very focused on minutiae and detail, and it's very sparse in its dialogue. And a surprisingly great performance by Robert Pattinson, who plays an American Southerner. Basically, the idea here is that there's some kind of post-apocalyptic thing going on.
Which you never know what it is.
You don't really know what it is.
No.
But it's sort of like this is between now and Mad Max. This is the linkage, right? If you want to put it that way, it's much more realistic. And something has happened. Society's disintegrated. Guy Pearce is sitting in some kind of makeshift bar. Everybody guards their stuff. Everyone's strapped with a shotgun. And outside, these two brothers, one of whom is Robert Pattinson, they're coming from some kind of illicit encounter, and they got a buddy who's bleeding to death, and they steal his car. And actually, no, Pattinson does not steal his car. Pattinson is... I'm trying to remember how this all shook out.
I'm not bailing you out on this.
No, well, anyway.
I want you to suffer.
Anyway, Pattinson's brother takes off with the car, and then Guy Pearce goes out and... Doesn't he stop Pattinson? Is that how it worked? I can't even remember the beginning.
Did you like it or not?
I like it a lot.
I like it a lot too.
I've completely forgotten the setup, but you don't need to remember the setup. Anyway, it's pretty sharp, and it's just the relationship between Guy Pearce and Robert Pattinson along the way as they're trying to track down Pattinson's brother, And, there are some cops in this thing, but there's almost like vigilante cops. It's a really... And the way the thing wraps up is so interesting, because you're trying to get inside Guy Pearce's head the whole time. What's making him tick? Why is he so mean? Why is he so determined to get his car back? The things, the lengths to which he will go, the tortures that he will inflict. It's a brutal, gritty, really stylish, cool film. And David Michôd had all kinds of offers to do Hollywood films, and he chose not to. He wanted to do this. And it's based on a story that he co-wrote with Joel Edgerton, who, of course, was, Joel Edgerton helped give him his career launch by producing Animal Kingdom. And I think it's a sharp little movie. So that's on Blu-ray and a digital HD combo set, and definitely worth checking out. Some really cool special features on here, mostly featurettes, but that's it. Check it out.
That was a great plot synopsis.
Yeah, anyway.
Oh, Wade.
That was horrible, but,
What are you going to do?
They can't all be gems.
Hey, that's my line.
I know.
I stole that from an old Mad magazine.
I know.
You didn't know that.
I'm gonna try switching up my microphone again. I think the 10 dB limiter was.
Now, should I do something too?
Yeah, switch yours back to the middle.
Yes,
switch
sir.
Put that little thing back to the middle.
All right, hang on. Working on it.
There we go.
How's that?
Better.
It is better.
It is better.
Okay, so here's the thing. Whichever listeners are remaining, we can talk about Neighbors.
Yeah.
With Seth Rogen and Zac Efron. And you know what? I like this movie. I like this movie because it's disgusting, but not in that really over-the-top, obnoxious, disgusting way. But also, it's funny. And it's disgusting, but yet funny, but not too disgusting. But also, there's another movie in this movie that I don't even think they knew they were making.
Perhaps.
There is something here about that very uncertain transition to adulthood that Seth Rogen and his wife are going through. Like, they see this frat boy neighbor, Zac Efron, they're having all sorts of fun.
Yeah.
And they still think they're young enough to be able to mix it up with the young kids. But actually, the young kids, they're really not. They're adults now, and they have a baby, and they have to be adults. And so it's I don't know that the movie really... I'm not sure if the movie wanted to make any points about this, but it actually does. That sometimes you've got to say, you know what? We're adults now. We've got a baby to take care of. We have a family to raise. Cool. We have jobs we have to go to. And you know what? As much as we used to be a frat boy, maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, those days are over.
All right.
I kind of like that. I mean, I feel that again. That was very. That's the subtext of the film. The unspoken subtext. I'm not sure even the film knew it was putting out there. But if you put that aside, it's still funny. The frat guys are idiots, and Seth Rogen is funny. And again, there's a bunch, there's like alcohol-laced breast milk and all that sort of stuff that is sort of like, okay, I get it, and more of that, blah, 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 I get that. But still, it's funny. It's the movie you expect it to be with Seth Rogen and Zac Efron, and it's good. It's funny. Liked it. On board.
I'm going to have to watch it now. See,
Also,
I had avoided this.
Now, Rose Byrne. Here's the thing with Rose Byrne.
Rose Byrne. I burned a rose once.
Rose Byrne.
I was getting confused. I was setting the table, and I forgot which was the flower and the candle, and
Well, I don't get it. Rose Byrne, who, by the way, is delicious.
True.
I saw her, not her personally, although I wish I had. She was in This Is Where I Leave You, whatever it's called. The Jason Bateman thing, which is not very good.
Sure.
But she's just a cog in that big sitcom machine of This Is Where I Leave You.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at her going, you've been in a whole lot of movies that I've seen you in, and I know you're in them, but somehow you're not a household name yet. You're like right there. You're the space shuttle, and you're trying to get escape velocity. You're Rose Byrne. You're almost there. Just really kind of like not quite there. She was in Bridesmaids. She was in X-Men First Class. She was in Neighbors. And it's kind of like, yeah, I feel like you're there, but you need that one little push to get into the superstardom that I think you're going for. Putting that out there. Okay, Wade.
Yeah.
I'm done with that.
Okay.
Here's a bad movie. Very Good Girls. Very Good Girls was written and directed by Naomi Foner, which is bizarre because she's never directed a film before. She's the one who wrote Running on Empty.
Naomi Foner is also, you know who she is? She's the mother of Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal.
True dat.
Yep.
So the mother of Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal, who never directed a film before and wrote Running on Empty, which is a great film from 1988, I'm tempted to say. wound up writing and directing a bad film about these two big city girls played by Dakota Fanning and Elizabeth Olsen, who decide that over the summer they are going to get laid for the first time before they leave for college.
Okay.
And they both have their eyes on the same dreamy street artist dude, played by some kid named Boyd Holbrook.
Okay.
Good cast: Ellen Barkin, Richard Dreyfuss, Demi Moore, obviously Dakota Fanning and Elizabeth Olsen. The first problem with the movie, quite frankly, is that Fanning and Olsen are too old to play these roles. They're supposed to be kids going off to college, and they're both, they both look too old. Anyway, this thing was very disappointing. I was expecting more from Naomi Foner, but what are you going to do?
So, The Signal is one of those movies that falls into what I call the Twilight Zonization of movies, and that has happened exponentially ever since The Sixth Sense. The director of this film, William Eubank, this is
Bob
second
Eubanks?
film. No, William Eubank.
Bob Eubanks? The game show host?
No.
From the Newlywed Game, whatever it was?
No. It's the Newlywed Game that he hosted, wasn't it? Anyway.
Something like that.
William Eubank, who wrote and directed this, previously did Love, which has nothing to do with love. It's basically kind of a companion film to Moon that was made in 2011 about a guy stuck in the space station. And that was supposed to be a resume piece and didn't really get him a lot of traction, so he made The Signal to get himself a lot more traction. Great cast, great effects, fascinating concept that just completely disintegrates by the end. It goes completely off the rails when it starts showing its cards, and none of it makes any sense. It's all just sort of to show off. And he's got a lot of style, but man, this really does not work as a story. And it's too bad, because with all of these films, you paint yourself into a corner, and everyone's waiting for the big reveal, the great unveiling, the great explaining. And the more exotic you make it, and the more twisted you make it, and the more confused you make the audience, and the more odd things you throw in there, the bigger the payoff has got to be. And all these movies do a really good job of building up like an incredibly bizarre scenario, but your expectations start going through the roof, and then when everything gets paid off, you just feel like did you really just go there? Are you kidding me? That's the resolution? The Signal is one of those movies. Bunch of kids starts off. This one I remember the setup. Bunch of kids are they're gonna go track down. There's some MIT kids, right? A couple of dudes and a girl. They're on their way to go and try to find this hacker who's kind of like a nemesis of theirs, and he was taunting them at MIT, and they're gonna go show him that they know how to find him, and they're gonna defy this hacker and all this kind of stuff. And the girl's like, hey man, it could be really dangerous. Maybe this guy's crazy. No, we can track him down. And you think it's a movie about kids and hackers, and then suddenly they have what can only be described as a close encounter. All hell breaks loose in a completely psychotic, weird, alien way in some house in the desert. And next thing you know, that one kid is left, and he wakes up in this underground facility run by Lawrence Fishburne, where he's in isolation, and Fishburne is wearing this, this suit and a helmet, and
Does he have a red pill and a blue pill?
No.
That's like the Matrix?
No. And he wants to know what happened to me. And of course, they spend the whole movie not telling you what happened to him, and he's trying to figure out where am I and what's going on down here in this chamber, etc., etc. And none of it makes a whole lot of sense until finally it all resolves, and you just have that, really, are you kidding me? That's the end experience. I'm sure some people will go, whoa, cool. I did not. I thought it was completely forced and preposterous. Good-looking Blu-ray, though, I'll say that. It's a good-looking blue. Carry on.
Fort McCoy is a very heartfelt and sentimental and labor of love-ish sort of film, written and directed by Kate Connor, and it takes place in 1944 at a obviously one of the American shames of World War II is that we had about a couple hundred Japanese prisoners in POW camps here, including George Takei.
Yes.
Now, also there was also a number of German and Italian American civilians who were arrested as potentially dangerous enemies of the state. And Fort McCoy is the story of Eric Stoltz. It's not the story of Eric Stoltz, but Eric Stoltz plays a guy. It's so funny how they don't want to have Eric Stoltz play like a soldier or a commander because there's too much like moral implications behind that the story can't handle. So they get him into this situation by making him the barber. He's the barber at Fort McCoy.
Of Seville?
Yes.
Yeah.
The barber of Fort McCoy. And while he's the barber at Fort McCoy, he's, he meets a Nazi SS officer. He's got a Catholic sister who falls in love with a Jewish soldier and all this sort of stuff. So it looks good. It's very heartfelt, obvious labor of love. I respect the film. It's a little too sentimental for me, but it's an interesting sidebar to the war that a lot of people don't know about, and I'm not sure has ever even really been explored, at least in terms of film. So Fort McCoy, it could be if your parents might like it.
Is there a real Fort McCoy?
Oh yeah,
there is.
Oh yes, and still around. Actually, Fort McCoy is still around. There still is a Fort McCoy.
Oh wow,
it
how about exists. That? Well, how about that?
It is in Wisconsin.
Of course it is. So anyhow, my name is A by Anonymous. This is based on an actual case, a thrill killer case. Young woman named Alyssa Bustamante. Do you know this story? Did you ever follow this story?
I did not.
Does it sound like the sound just changed?
I'm not wearing a headset. You're wearing a headset.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're not wearing anything. I'm trying to figure this whole thing out. It sounds like it may have improved suddenly for some strange reason. The way the USB mics are very odd. Anyway, no, this is a true story, written and directed by Shane Ryan, who does a decent job with it. I'm not that familiar with the actual story, so I have to imagine that it means to share a little bit in common with Beautiful Creatures, the Peter Jackson film.
Right.
And that's a very famous kind of two women who became killers story. And same thing here. This is, a story, a very interesting story. 9-year-old girl disappears, and what transpires thereafter is deeply disturbing and a little bit really weird, frankly. But for this particular genre of film, I found it to be surprisingly engaging. So that is from Wild Eye Releasing, kind of a nice little discovery. And then last on the new movie front, before we let Mark kind of tell us what else is coming out, we have Virgil Films, a film called After by director Pieter Gasperts. A really interesting cast here that includes Kathleen Quinlan, who's kind of the main anchor, but some other really solid actors, John Doman, who I've seen in a few things, Diane Neal, Bruno Gunn, Mandy Gonzalez. These are not household names, but when you see them, you're like, oh, I've seen them and this and that and the other thing. So it was a really interesting bit of casting. But Kathleen Quinlan, of course, a longtime favorite of mine, going all the way back to Twilight Zone, the movie.
That's right.
She was great in that.
She was there was the cornfield one.
Anyway, this is a really interesting, very timely story about a family that is in upstate New York, kind of falling apart. Because the family business is falling apart, and as far as these family dramas go, this is totally different from any of the others. It goes into completely different places. It doesn't tread on all those cliches. Like, what was the Meryl Streep thing that I hated so much? Osage County.
That's right. Yes.
Oh, Osage County, whatever it was. Horrible. This is not that. This is better, and didn't get really a theatrical release. Could have, if we lived in a different era. If we lived 10, 15 years ago. So. Give a shout out to Kathleen Quinlan and Virgil Films' release of After. Pretty sharp.
Wait, we talk about DVDs that'll be coming your way soon?
Hit us.
Forget it, not going to.
Okay,
Change
fine.
my mind.
All right.
I wanted to, but now I'm not.
Fine.
My Fair Lady, 50th anniversary, coming out in December.
I know a few things about this, by the way.
Whoa!
And it's going to blow your mind. And I never thought this would happen, honestly, this My Fair Lady release. There are a lot of rights reasons, there's that. Anyway, I'll explain it more when we cover it.
All right. Well, that's coming out.
Yeah.
Time Bandits coming out on Criterion.
Totally.
Yes. Criterion December. Huh?
Have you seen Terry Gilliam's new film?
I heard it's terrible. I've not seen it.
It's just like, it's turgid.
I think he's done.
It's turgid. No, it's like he took all of these little pieces of Brazil and tried to invent a new story around them, but there's no story. It's just like...
It looks kind of low budget and...
Yeah, and it's got like really bad CGI in it, and it's... Christoph Waltz is not endearing. He's weird, and he calls himself we. He speaks we this, we that, and it's not good. It's really it just kind of it doesn't go anywhere.
That's a shame. He hasn't done a good film in a while. He was on the Tonight Show promoting it.
I know.
Now, of course, Jimmy Fallon, the worst interviewer in talk show history. You got a guy like Terry Gilliam on. You've really got to let him make a case for himself. Talk about Monty Python. Talk about Brazil or Time Bandits. What a crazy guy he is. Life he's had. Oh, now when you're Jimmy Fallon, you just talk about Jimmy Fallon because all Jimmy Fallon does is interrupt because he's Jimmy Fallon and he can do that. Anyway, also, I'm going to say this is a personal favorite of mine. Not a favorite of mine, but I did notice that it's going to be released on Blu-ray by Kino in a couple of months. Now you're saying, why are you calling out this film of all the films in the world? Mm-hmm. I like the package. Okay, with Gene Hackman and Tommy Lee Jones.
I don't dislike it.
It was directed by Andrew Davis, who would go on to direct The Fugitive.
I don't dislike it.
I always found that. Well, first of all, I love Gene Hackman almost as much as I love Denzel Washington. In fact, when Crimson Tide came out with Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington, that was like pornography for me.
All right.
Because they're my favorite. Anyway, the package is coming out. By the way, just one of my own personal favorites. I was just saying, Mark, you're crazy. I'm not that crazy. Anyway, what else is coming out? Let me see. We have The Walking Dead Season 5 is coming out. Who cares about that? 10th anniversary Blu-ray of Sideways. Kind of interesting. That's coming out soon.
Yep.
And, So also, by the way, Norman Jewison's Fist. Now, Wade is I would only say this because Wade has something to say about Fist. Fist was like this pro-labor film that starred...
Joe Esterhaas wrote it.
Joe Esterhaas wrote it, and Stallone starred in it.
Yeah.
That's coming out finally. Never been out before.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, look, Melinda Dillon is a very good friend of mine since I was a kid. Grew up with her son, who's a good friend of mine. So, anything that Melinda's in, I kind of grew up with. So that includes Close Encounters and Fist and Bound for Glory. And I love all those movies. It was just cool at the time to be able to see a movie and go, I know somebody in that movie.
Now, Wade, you just put something in front of me.
Yes, I did.
That we need to talk about.
Yes, we do. Well, we're gonna talk about. We'll get into it in a moment. Let's just cover a few of it. We're talking about classic movies. Right now, we got a giant stack of them, so we got to burn through these so that we can dedicate the last 20-25 minutes to the George Feltenstein interview.
Oh, good. We still have George.
Oh, we still have George, absolutely.
And
I'm going to throw another shout out to Cohen, who has a crazy awesome classic film here. This is a film I thought would never, ever see the light of day again. This thing just kind of languished out there, and it was like a forgotten film. A Fritz Lang movie written by Bertolt Brecht, Hangmen Also Die. This is just absolutely phenomenal. Fully restored, thanks to the British Film Institute and Pinewood Studios. It includes a 1-minute sequence that was not included in the original domestic release. And amazing cinematography by James Wong Howe. It is a really, really cool World War II political thriller. And it all takes place in Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia, and it's just incredibly sharp. And anyone who knows Bertolt Brecht, I mean, when you have a name that people turn into an adjective like Kubrick and Kubrickian, Brecht and Brechtian, you know that you're something special. And Fritz Lang and Bertolt Brecht just absolutely kill it with this. It is a fascinating combination of talents. The film was made during World War II, before World War II even concluded, so you still have that feeling that a lot of World War II films, like in 1943 in this case, had, which is the vibrancy of this unresolved conflict and the fact that nobody really knows how it's going to resolve. And the United States had just entered the war, and it's pretty great stuff. Then we also have a couple of awesome releases from Criterion that I also have been waiting for forever. Jack Clayton's The Innocents on Blu-ray. Arguably the scariest movie I have ever seen. If not the scariest, certainly in the top 3. Jack Clayton, wonderful director.
Excuse me, Wade.
Good grief. Also did, Room at the Top, got an Oscar nomination for it more recently before he passed away. Certainly within the last few decades. One of his last films was Something Wicked This Way Comes, with Jonathan Pryce, who, of course, was in Brazil by Terry Gilliam, bringing everything full circle. So Jack Clayton, The Innocents, one of the greatest ghost stories you'll ever see. Fantastic performance by Deborah Kerr. This is like the anti-Mary Poppins governess movie. It's just outstanding. Tons of special features here, including an audio commentary by Christopher Frayling, who is a historian, and just wonderful, wonderful look back at the movie. It is really great. Beautiful widescreen, fantastic black and white Blu-ray of The Innocents. The other criterion here is The Tragedy of Macbeth, Roman Polanski's version of the Shakespeare play, which is arguably one of the best ever made. It's just first rate. Polanski pulls out all the stops, completely Polanskiizes the thing. You get the 1971 documentary Polanski Meets Macbeth on here, gobs of other extras that just are incredibly fantastic. There's even an interview with co-screenwriter Kenneth Tynan from the Dick Cavett show in 1971. And anything with Dick Cavett is just the best, isn't it? Wasn't Dick
totally.
Cavett the best interviewer ever of all time?
I don't know about ever of all time, but he definitely was awesome.
Cavett was he was it. Anyway, so really, really wonderful. And an essay by Terence Rafferty, of all people. So that's from 1971. 2 hours and 20 minutes of Polanski doing Macbeth. And man, is that that'll just wipe you out.
Mama said knock you out?
You got it.
Ghostbusters 1 and 2, which is now packaged in a pretty little handsome Digibook-style case, finally out. Mm-hmm. Both have some all-new features. Obviously, Ghostbusters totally holds up. Classic, mostly thanks to Bill Murray, because he's timeless and great and always hilarious. I liked Ghostbusters 2. Most people did not.
I like 2 scenes in Ghostbusters 2. Yeah. Just 2 scenes, though.
The part where there's a ghost?
No, I just there are only 2 scenes in the movie that I like, and one of them is when Peter McNichol says, "Via my covets vis goo." I still laugh at that.
You know, I'm not. I noticed when I popped this in that on the back of the box, the Digibook box, they actually list every single language that comes with the subtitles. They usually don't do that.
Yes.
They don't put it on the back of the box. Usually on the back of the box, it doesn't say English, Arabic, Bulgarian, Chinese, Croatian, Czech, Danish, Dutch, Finnish, French, German, Greek, Hebrew,
it does
Hindi,
here.
Hungarian, Icelandic, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Norwegian, Polish, Portuguese, Romanian, Russian, Spanish, Swedish, Thai, and Turkish. It doesn't usually say that on the back of the box.
Yeah, well, it does this time.
Anyway, these films are great. The transfers are the same as in the previous 17,000 versions of the DVD and Blu-ray of Ghostbusters. Actually, the Blu-ray of Ghostbusters 1 and 2. But looks good. New features. Got to get it. Remastered in 4K. Love it. Ghostbusters 1 and 2.
I concur. Let's talk just for a second. It's funny. They finally reconciled themselves to the fact that Bill Murray was never going to sign on to a Ghostbusters 3. But they still didn't want to actually hire anybody else until they got Bill Murray's blessing. And apparently now it's a go. Now that Bill Murray's like, yeah, I'm okay with female Ghostbusters. That sounds like a good idea. Now it's a go. It's just the last thing you want is Bill Murray bad-mouthing your new Ghostbusters.
But tell me it's not going to be like Paul Feig directing
Kristen
Wiig and Liz McCarthy.
It will be. No. It will be. It'll be Paul Feig or Feig. How do you pronounce it?
It's Feig.
Is it Feig?
Pretty sure.
Whatever.
Producer Mike knows him.
I know. Anyway, Disney has given us special editions now of 2 of their sort of less highly regarded animated films from the Katzenberg and Eisner era, Hercules and Tarzan. I, of course, really am of the opinion that there's only ever been one screen Tarzan that's worth paying attention to, and that is Greystoke. But at least this honors the period, unlike the other animated Tarzan, the CGI animated Tarzan we talked about a couple of weeks ago. This honors the period. It Disneyfies it a little bit too much. It's not really Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan. It's Disney's version of Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan, which is exactly what they intended, because they had to find a way of taking the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse at Disneyland and Disney World and making it more relevant to a film that's more recent than 45 years ago. So we'll make it Tarzan's treehouse. Okay, fine. That's the way you're going to be about it. Anyway, beautifully done. Not my favorite film, but I don't dislike it. It's got a bunch of fun little special features, a thing on the music and thing on Africa and Phil Collins' music video. And otherwise, it is good for kids, so I will be hanging on to it for when my daughter gets to look at it and after she's read Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan and realizes that it's not as good. Hercules is a film I don't like in the least. I just think this is completely misbegotten, but a lot of people do like it, so I won't overly rip on it. I think the animation is tired. It's got a sing-along on it and a music video, and otherwise, I would say it's really, really nicely mastered. I have no problem with the look and sound of the Disney Blu-rays. They're amazing. They really are amazing. And then let me crank through a bunch of Kino releases here.
Right, where's the interview, Wade? We got to do the interview.
We are going to do the interview. Let's just knock out a couple of these. We got to get through these Kinos. Get through these Kinos. Get through those Twilight Times, and then we'll drop into the interview. Kino, of course, has their Studio Classics line, which is essentially mostly Orion, UA, MGM titles from that contract, and they have released a whole batch of really great new titles. Avalanche with Rock Hudson, Mia Farrow, and Robert Forster. All of these on Blu-ray, of course. This is Avalanche from 1978, which probably would have done better if it didn't wind up coming out the exact same year as Superman, and nobody really wanted to see Superman or see anything other than Superman, and certainly not directed by Corey Allen, produced by Roger Corman. But this was kind of a better than average action set piece movie at the time. So if you remember it fondly, you'll probably want to check it out again. Absolutely first-rate, awesome film, written and directed by Richard Brooks, is Elmer Gantry.
Good stuff.
So good, man. Won Burt Lancaster an Oscar for this part from 1960 as the traveling salesman from hell. He is a hustler. He knows how to sell it, man. He is that greasy, oily, conniving guy, and this is just a great movie. Absolutely fantastic. Richard Brooks, I don't know if he made a better film. I really don't. I mean, he made a lot of good movies, but this is it. It's got an interview with Shirley Jones and a trailer, and it is a good-looking Blu-ray. Taras Bulba with Tony Curtis and Yul Brynner is a little silly. Any period film with Tony Curtis in it, he just takes you right out of it. He does that in Spartacus. As soon as Tony Curtis shows up in Spartacus, you're on the back lot. You know what I mean? You're on the back lot. It just doesn't work with Tony Curtis. But it's okay. Yul Brynner is fine. There's a little bit of a historical thing in this. It's a 16th century story that takes place in Ukraine. So if you want to try to draw some parallels to the present day, I guess you probably can. Otherwise, it's a big glossy Hollywood widescreen thing with a kind of a maudlin screenplay by Waldo Salt and Carl Thunberg, who are a couple of giants, but there's no way that these guys work together. Thunberg rewrote Waldo Salt, and that's where some problems arise. J. Lee Thompson directed it. It's a nice, big, beautiful 2:35 widescreen 1962 epic that was overshadowed by Lawrence of Arabia the same year. Burt Lancaster in The Young Savages, another great performance by Lancaster, and we're not done. It's a big Burt Lancaster week. This is a John Frankenheimer film. And he plays a prosecutor here, trying to get to the bottom of the story with this East Harlem, this case that's very, 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 heavily racial. 1961, race was a big deal. They were starting to seed it into movies, and it's a little bit of a companion piece to Kill a Mockingbird, which came out the following year. Burt Lancaster's also really, really good in Run Silent, Run Deep, the famous legendary World War II submarine movie with Clark Gable. This needs no introduction. It's a fun movie. Great score by Franz Waxman, and also produced by Harold Hecht, who produced the Young Savages, who was doing a lot of the Burt Lancaster stuff at the time. And it's a sharp movie, really sharp movie. Directed by Robert Wise, who would, of course, go on to win 2 Academy Awards for both Sound of Music and West Side Story.
Not Star Trek the Motion Picture?
No. Flesh and Blood is the Paul Verhoeven movie that kind of put him on the map. This was his first English language film. Really graphic, really violent, but great performance in particular from Rutger Hauer. Kind of the very typical Paul Verhoeven movie, noteworthy in part because it was photographed by Jan de Bont. So you have 2 future Hollywood mega action directors involved here. Jennifer Jason Leigh is a little bit out of place in the period story. Again, this is a 16th century tale, kind of a medieval knight, lots of lust and all that. We've got a couple with Sean Connery, as long as we're talking about Scottish independence. And Meteor was a gigantic bomb. Do you remember what a tank this was?
Oh, yeah.
1979, the year of Star Trek the Motion Picture, by the way. Man, this thing, Ronald Neame, Ronald Neame did the Poseidon Adventure, great British director, but man, this was just like the end of the old school action film. This was a disaster. And Stanley Mann co-wrote it with Edmund North. It's all about a meteor that's going to collide with the Earth. All-star cast, horrible, just horrible. Natalie Wood and Sean Connery cannot save this film. It's Martin Landau, Trevor Howard, Henry Fonda, Carl Malden. Everybody shows up in this thing. Dreadful. Here is the gem this week. If there's one that you got to go out and rent or buy, you got to look at The Great Train Robbery. Michael Crichton directed this.
That is bizarre. It seems so un-Crichton-esque.
It's so un-Crichton. Everything that he was writing and or directing from 1970 all the way through to the day he died, with the exception of ER on television, it was all science fiction stuff. It was all kind of, futuristic cautionary viruses and man's technology run amok, and, it was all that. Jurassic Park and Andromeda Strain are essentially the same movie, if you think about it. I mean, there's not a lot of difference there. And all Crichton ever did was science fiction-y stuff, except for this. And it's his best film.
It is fun.
It is a lot of fun. And Sean Connery and Donald Sutherland, Leslie Ann Down. It is absolutely wonderful. Produced by Dino De Laurentiis, one of the rare cases where his films didn't suck. And it's just fantastic. Great Jerry Goldsmith music. It's a wonderful, wonderful movie. Cannot say enough about it. So Michael Crichton, as a director, never had a better moment. And you want to check this out. So it's from Kino Lorber, Blu-ray of The Great Train Robbery at long last. What else we got, Mark?
More?
No, the Twilight Time stuff.
Oh, all right. Then we'll do the interview.
Then we'll do the interview, and then we're done.
Okay, here we go. Running through the Twilight Time stuff, we have La Bamba, which was
love this movie.
Luis Valdez's terrific biopic on Richie Valens, played, of course, memorably by Lou Diamond Phillips, his best performance. In fact, I would argue his only performance.
It's not far off.
A lot of good special features here, including audio commentary with Luis Valdez and Lou Diamond Phillips and Isai Morales, who is very good. Also,
he is really good in this. Morales is.
He was, you know what, that was a great supporting actor.
Yeah.
Where you cared about him and you cared about his journey as a character, but he existed ultimately to support the character of Richie Valens. And that's really what a supporting actor is supposed to do. So this is a great, only the good die young sort of, myth. And the great thing about it too, which maybe this might resonate now, it didn't really resonate necessarily then, was that Richie Valens, this is not a story about a guy who died because he took drugs or he shot up or he killed his wife or he whatever it is.
No, he's a good kid.
He was just a good kid, and he had his meteoric rise, and then a terrible tragedy happened. But it was just nice to see that sort of film not have to do with he shot up. And they found him dead with track marks in downtown L.A. It was just kind of nice. So you can enjoy it on that level as well. We also have one of Oliver Stone's best films, Salvador.
It's shocking how good this movie is when you consider what a hack he became.
James Woods gives one of his best performances. He plays a photojournalist who the guy has traveled all over the world, all these trouble spots for decades. And now, because he's just a complete drunk, he can barely get a job until he's convinced by a buddy of his, played by Jim Belushi, to go to El Salvador and all the stuff that happens there. This is just a great film. It really sets the tone for who Oliver Stone would become.
This was kind of the thing that put him on the map.
Yeah. And John Savage is always way out there.
He's out of his mind.
He's always out of his mind. This is Hemdale, by the way. Hemdale produced this.
I know.
Hemdale, the production company of the late great
George Harrison. I have experience. No,
not George Harrison. I'm on The Handmaid.
Handmaid was
George
Hemdale
Harrison.
Hemdale made Platoon.
Hemdale made Platoon.
I have a bit of a story about Hemdale.
Here we go.
Another time. They still owe me money from 30 years ago.
Wow. Do you think you'll ever get that money?
No.
Sam
$250. I want my $2.
This is not one of Sam Peckinpah's best films, but I liked it. It's The Killer Elite. And this is one of those movies. It's about a bunch of guys. They're like ex-CIA agents. They've all retired, and his ex-partner, and they all go out and they just kick butt. It's got a great cast. It's got James Caan. It's got Robert Duvall. Mako's in it, and I liked it. I think it's good. It's really fun. Obviously, Sam Peckinpah, even though he's a little bit of autopilot here, still he is Sam Peckinpah. The guy's going to bring the violence. He's going to bring the fun. I like Killer Elite. It's a good movie. Che. Now this is not the
Soderbergh
one. This is the one by Richard Fleischer, and this is just a bizarre. This is probably the weirdest role that Omar Sharif ever played.
It is, without question.
Do you see Omar Sharif as playing this character?
So strange. It's so weird that he would do this, but
And what's even weird is that Fidel Castro is played by Jack Palance. So Jack Palance, who'd win an Oscar for City Slickers, and do a one-handed push-up on the Oscar stage, and
so weird.
Omar Sharif. Is it a good film?
No.
Well, okay. I think it's better than the Soderbergh film. I think the Soderbergh film. I think the Soderbergh film is too indulgent. He was too in love with his fancy new camera that he wanted to go down and shoot with, that he couldn't just make a tight, coherent film. And Soderbergh has made plenty of tight, coherent films. So I would give this a run over the Soderbergh one.
Yeah, I guess.
Finally, from John Irvin, we have The Dogs of War.
I like this movie.
Yeah. Do you like this movie?
I do. I like it. I mean, I like, as far as John Irvin war movies go, I like Hamburger Hill a lot better. But I like Hamburger Hill. I like that better than Platoon, frankly. I think it's one of the great Vietnam films.
Christopher Walken is just great in this.
He is.
It's really good that he plays. There's a group of soldiers, and and they go to Africa to overthrow the government there and help out a coup, and it's really cool. It's a cool movie, kind of overlooked.
All right, and with that, we are now going to segue into our interview with George. Oh no, it's not a Vox Box. With George Feltenstein of the Warner Archive.
I am speaking with George Feltenstein of the Warner Archives and of WarnerArchive.com, and I have to do a shout out to one of our listeners, John Lusty, who actually recommended this because he listens to your podcast along with Matthew Patterson. And he wrote us and said, you guys really should talk to them because you guys do a lot of the same stuff. And so I did give your podcast a listen, and it's enthralling, and I think I'm hooked. Here are some of the things that John wanted to know about, and I think that a lot of our listeners want to know about as well. And for starters, I mean, there is such an enormous volume of material in the Warner Archives. All the studios have huge archives. Most of them apparently either don't care or don't want to tap those archives. You guys have made a project of it. How do you even get started?
Well, we were the first, and this was something that was planned as early as discussed as early as 2003 or 4. We didn't actually launch until March 23rd, 2009. But the idea was we have a library 3 times the size of anybody else's, and some of my colleagues were saying we have to find a way to get the deeper library available to everyone, because at that time, in 2009, there were about 4,100 movies that were on VHS up until 2003 when we stopped making VHS. And we only had about 1,700 movies on DVD.
Wow.
So where was the delta of the library? Where were the rest of those films going to come from? And then, of course, from my perspective, my involvement, I've been working with this library for many, many years. I was at MGM for 10 years. I was eventually the head of MGM UA Home Video. And then Turner bought the library. I eventually moved to Turner, and then Warner Brothers bought Turner, and I came to Warner Brothers. And so my play chest has become a lot larger over the years. But whether it be on video cassette, Laserdisc, DVD, and now Blu-ray, and streaming, the library to me is a fascinating amalgam of the works of thousands and thousands of artists spanning decades, not names on a page, not pork bellies. We look at these films and television shows as important films and television shows, and also something that may not be so important but has a following out there. And I've prided myself on knowing what fits where and what goes where, and I started in traditional home video retail, and then as the retail business began to shift, where a lot of the stores where I would go shopping every Sunday morning I would be at either Tower Records or Virgin or whatever, buying DVDs and CDs. A lot of those stores closed up. And whereas the video business continued to be robust, the business for catalog started to not have a retail outlet, and so we started the Warner Archive collection with 150 features using existing masters, and now 5.5 years later, we're at almost 2,000 releases, and we, within a year of being in the business, started remastering because we were running out of good quality masters that were in their original aspect ratio, which was essential for me from the beginning.
Right.
And eventually we reinvested in the library and continue to, and that's how, and since I'm a listener of your podcast and a religious one, I know you've talked about the monogram films that we've released and some of the really obscure films that weren't on any lists. And in fact, we're on memos from previous owners like Allied Artists and Lorber, where they said, these films are worthless, it's okay if they deteriorate. And I was like, I don't agree with that philosophy. I know there's an audience out there for this.
Yeah.
And whether it be something like Red Dust with Gene Harlow and Clark Gable, which people were clamoring for and never had made it to DVD, or it's the monogram cowboy movies or the Bowery Boys, or the television series like Beyond Westworld, which lasted 5 weeks before it rightfully got yanked off the air. But there's an audience for it, and we've prided ourselves on expanding to television, to animation, made-for-television movies, and most recently, and we're extraordinarily proud of this, Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And we're taking that very seriously, and the releases have been slow in coming because we've been putting so much work into them because Blu-ray demands perfection and no shortcuts. So that's where we are, and we're dedicated, and what we don't have in resources and people, we make up in passion, and I think that is hopefully what distinguishes us from the rest.
Well, it definitely shows. You know, when one of my proudest moments is when you put Greystoke out, because I was a lowly usher at the Mann's National Theater in Westwood when Greystoke opened, and it was one of the most extraordinary platform releases, I think, of that day. I remember we were selling shows out repeatedly every weekend, week after week. I mean, it was an extraordinary run. And so that's burned into my memory as one of these great cinematic moments from my past. And the Blu-ray came out, and of course I just couldn't control myself. So, those are moments that where we just kind of sing your praises. And they of course just recently sent us the Great Race, which I have to applaud you guys on. That is just such a marvelous candy-colored slapstick gem from the past, and you did a beautiful job on it, an absolutely spectacular job. I mean, how did that kind of fall onto the radar, and at what point did you say this has got to be a Blu-ray?
Well, what we do is I still have a dotted line to Warner Home Video. I have one leg of my one limb is still in that business, so I'm involved in some of the things that they do, but most of my daily functions are as taking care of the Warner Archive collection. But when you see something like Point Blank coming from Warner Home Video, you know that I've had a hand in it. And if we feel a film has retail potential, then Warner Home Video will go with it. And if Warner Home Video isn't interested in a particular film, then we'll do it for Warner Archive for Blu-ray. And The Great Race, I was like shocked, like it has such a fan base. People will initially perceive, this was a box office failure. Well, 50 years almost have passed, and in between the time it was released, and it did cost $12 million to make it, which was a lot of money at the time, but there have been decades and decades of people who love this movie, and I said, I think this would make a wonderful Blu-ray, and happily all the pieces fell into place, and we, made sure that when the great Leslie was coming down through the clouds, that the clouds were immaculate, and that there were no speckles and there's no dirt, and Blu-ray is supposed to be the look and sound of perfect.
Yeah.
And that's what the Blu-ray Disc Association says, and those are the rules we abide by. So it means, you brought up Greystoke. We sent Greystoke back to the cleaners 4 times, not in terms of dirt issues, but in terms of compression. When you've got waterfalls and grain that's supposed to be there in the film, the way that film was so shot so beautifully, that's very, very hard to compress on Blu-ray and have the motion and the movement be lifelike. And we, like they used to say, we sell no wine before it's time. And, we don't want something going out on Blu-ray until it's ready and it looks and sounds the best that it can be. And that we know we're selling our content directly to the fans and directly to people who are passionate about cinema. So we take it very seriously, and I only wish that Blake Edwards was around because I'm a big fan of his. I had the good pleasure of meeting him several years ago, and I'm excited because I feel that it's going to get a lot of attention because of this Blu-ray release. It came out on DVD in 2001 and really hasn't been promoted or marketed very much since then. And I think the time is right for people to rediscover this movie if they forgot about it, or discover it for the first time if they haven't seen it. And I'm giddy with anticipation, as tomorrow is Street Date, and our hopes are high, because the more successful these releases are, the more that we can continue to mine the library for great Blu-rays while we continue to unearth noirs that nobody but Eddie Muller has ever heard of. So,
well, what I mentioned on the podcast was that it's uncanny to me how many people I talk to who've seen The Great Race years ago, but they don't. Their recollection is it's a Terry Thomas movie. It's not a Jack Lemmon movie. And I just said, see, that's the amazing thing. Jack Lemmon, a guy you normally who's so iconic, he disappears into that character in a way that your memory, you think he's someone else. I mean, it's just amazing.
He's remarkable in it, and I hadn't seen the film in a long time until we started working on it, and I had fond memories of watching it on the 4:30 movie in New York growing up, when it was in 2 parts because it was so long, and I had shown it in the film series when I was in college in 60-millimeter CinemaScope, and then the DVD came out shortly after I moved to Warner Home Video, but I really hadn't seen it in a very long time, and I was like, I remember this movie being really good, but it's better than I even remembered it.
It is.
And I'm very excited about the release, and I'm very grateful. I'm excited that you're excited as a fan of your podcast.
Well, thank you. That's so flattering. Now, let me ask you, too. Here's the thing about the technological part of this, because it's the archives have got to pose big problems and challenges every once in a while. How do you deal with the technological end, and what are some of the biggest challenges that you have had so far?
Well, there are 2 sets of challenges. The challenges for DVD. Blu-ray is a whole other set of challenges, but I'll talk about just like the DVD side of things. The great majority of our library, and we're talking like the older, let's say the Falcon series with George Sanders and his brother Tom Conway, or even a movie like Red Dust with Gene Harler and Clark Gable. Most of these movies hadn't been mastered in 20 years, 25 years. The existing masters that are shown on television are not questioned because they've been sold to TV, and the broadcaster says that's fine. They'll up-convert it to a fake HD or whatever. But nobody really questions quality, and we have a certain responsibility to making sure that the end product is worthwhile to the consumer. Now, at the same time, you have a very, very, very rare obscure movie from 1930 that nobody's been able to see and nobody's heard of. Our sales expectations are going to be less, so we adjust our spend accordingly because we have an accountability to our fans. We also have an accountability to the shareholders of our company, and I have to be accountable to management to running a profitable business.
Right.
So it's that balance between profitability and quality that is constant. It's the battle. I've heard so many filmmakers talk about this, art versus commerce. It's the endless battle. And trying to, another example of this, we just released finally our last volume of Bowery Boys films.
Yes, you did, number 4.
4 and 48 movies. Now, we started to try to release this as a Warner Home Video release in 2005, and we wanted to go chronological. And someone came into my office with the tape of the master, the best master we had, and said, George, I don't think you're going to want to release this. And it was not only from 60 millimeter, but there were about 30 splices just in the main titles alone.
Oh, wow.
I was like, we're in trouble. And I found out that we had no 35 millimeter material on the film, and that basically stalled anything with the Bowery Boys for years and years and years. And it shifted where catalog new to DVD eventually became more the domain of what we do with Warner Archive, and so we approached these films, but we couldn't go chronological, and this last set has that problematic film, Mr. Hex, where we used 5 different film elements, both 35 millimeter and 16 millimeter, to come up with the best possible result. And so that's a 9-year journey. That's one example of the kind of problems we run into. Now, here's another example where the end result is also a positive result. We've been doing a series of pre-code movies that dates back to my days in video cassette at MGM that we bill as Forbidden Hollywood. And I started Forbidden Hollywood as a VHS set of releases in 1989. Came to Warner Home Video. We started Forbidden Hollywood on DVD in 2004 or so and continued it with Warner Archive. There was one film I wanted to put out in Forbidden Hollywood called The Key with William Powell. And I had them pull the fine grain positive, which is a safety copy of the original negative that was made back in the 50s, and it had very severe vinegar syndrome.
Oh, dear.
And what that meant was we couldn't use it to scan it to create a new master. Here's the good part. This is a Warner Brothers film. The Warner Brothers nitrate negatives are mostly all on deposit at the Library of Congress. We brought in the original negative. We made new fine grains. We scanned those new fine grains, created a new master, ended up going in a William Powell and Warner Brothers set. But this request to look at the film let us know that our protection material was suffering from vinegar syndrome. And we go through periodically, the vault people go through and check for vinegar all the time, but you're not going to be able to know with this condition of everything. And the work that we do has given us such a light. It shines such a bright light on the state of the film elements of all these different parts of the library. Another example I could give you is we've been releasing Dr. Kildare with Richard Chamberlain, which I think is a great series that's been totally forgotten, hasn't been seen in 25 years.
Yeah.
The second season, second episode was called The Burning Sky and was in color. And I was like, why would a black and white series have one episode in color? We'll negate the fact that the fifth and last season was in color, and it's a different story. But why was this second episode in color? So I went and did my research, found out that NBC was doing a promotion with their parent company, RCA, to help sell color TVs, and they had a color week. See your favorite black and white shows in color. So that's why that episode, The Burning Sky, was shot in color.
Fascinating.
So we pull in the interpositive and do our master, because we've been remastering, even though we're coming out on DVD with all these TV shows that we're doing, all the remastering we're doing is in fact in HD, and we do our HD master from the interpositive, which is made from the camera negative, and there's this terrible light and dark throughout the whole master. And I had them look at the film element, which was made in 1962, and there was something wrong with the light bulb in the lab when they made this element, and the element was 52 years old and in effect defective. So what happened? We went back to the camera negative, made a new interpositive, and used that for our release. But if we weren't putting these things out, we wouldn't know that these problems exist. And thank God they're still making film stock, because we're living in an era where film stock is on its, on borrowed time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I, on a personal level, I am worried about the day when we don't have film stock for preservation. So,
well, Robert Harris has given me has communicated that same thing to me, that it's you need the stock for preservation. If nothing
exactly,
else.
And that's why he and I are very close friends, and we lament the state of this all the time, and that's it's a very rewarding part of what we do. Not only bringing people the films and television shows they want to own. And we're constantly listening to people's requests, and if something makes sense, we clear music for something that hasn't been distributed for 30 years because nobody wanted to deal with clearing the music. We'll do that. Sometimes it'll take many, many years, but we stick to it, and we're dedicated to it.
Well, let me ask you, before we run out of time here, I want to also know how you handle the various libraries that comprise the Warner library now, because I think, as everybody knows, it's not just Warner titles. It's Warner and MGM and Samuel Goldwyn and Monogram and RKO, and over the years, the Warner library has grown through acquisitions to become so large and so rich, and to represent such an incredibly deep history of film across such a broad base. That just seems like on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to be just a huge thing to have to wrap your arms around. Do you have a process? Is there a committee process, or is there some kind of a method that you use to sort of try to tackle that and take it apart brick by brick?
Well, here's the beauty of it, and I do want to clarify also that the Samuel Goldwyn films are owned by the Samuel Goldwyn Family Trust,
yes, and
we have them under domestic home video license.
Right.
Just like we have a licensing deal for disc domestically with Paramount. But overall, our core library is, of course, all Warner Brothers films, with the exception of films where Jack Warner made bad deals and they reverted to a third party, like My Fair Lady. All MGM films that were made up through April 1986, courtesy of our purchase of Turner, which had bought the MGM library from Krikorian. And then the RKO library, which we also got when we bought Turner. Those are the main ones. And then when we bought Lorber, Allied Artists and Monogram, what was left of that, because they had sold things off over the years, that fell under Warner Brothers ownership. So you've really got 3 major studio libraries plus 2 minor studio libraries and a lot of independents. And I have colleagues that I've been working with through various dynasties who, Stephen Anastasi in particular, I want to give a shout-out to, because I worked with him back at Turner, and then when Turner was purchased by Warner Brothers, he heads up our film preservation here at Warner Brothers. He's got an amazing staff of people that constantly track these things and make sure that the library is cared for. And the beauty of it is we're always making new discoveries. We're finding things that we didn't know we had. We're opening up cans and finding out that something is missing in the can, and we find that leads to a search of finding something else that was in the wrong can, and then you find something else you didn't know you had. So I've been doing this for many, many years, and every day is still one fraught with discovery, and that is not only for film, but also for audio. We had a huge series of CD soundtracks that came out through a joint venture we had with Rhino Records years ago, and I had the honor of producing many, many soundtrack CDs. And then that continued with Film Score Monthly. Lucas Kendall, a wonderful gentleman who put out so many of the instrumental scores, he became a great friend. And then there's all the animation. I mean, it's endless. I am hoping that I want to be here till I'm at least 85 or 90. I got a lot of work to do, and I love my job, and I love working for Warner Brothers, and I love being able to get the content to the people that want it, because I'm one of the people. I am a consumer of DVDs and Blu-rays and streaming and the whole bit.
Well,
so I am one of. I always say to the people when I talk to them, you know, I'm just like you. I'm one of you. I buy the latest releases that come from our colleagues at other studios if they're films that we want. You know, I spent this weekend having a great time with the wonderful Criterion disc of Sweet Smell of Success, which is one of my favorite movies. So I celebrate the work of other people, and, you know, we're all in this together, and that's why Bob Harris is one of my best friends.
Well,
so.
he's a good friend of mine, too, and it's an education every single time I talk to him. I feel like I learn something new. So my last question then, is there anything that you can talk about that might be coming down the pike? And I'm glad you mentioned the animation there, too, because the Hanna-Barbera stuff is something that I always look forward to. That's an entirely amazing library unto itself. Is there anything that you can talk about that's coming down the pike?
Well, I can say there will be more Hanna-Barbera. There will be more films on Blu-ray. We don't like to tip our hat too much about something that may be coming along, because if we hit a snag, then we end up with a disappointed consumer. Case in point, I've been trying for 5 years to release Frank Perry's Last Summer, and we won't do it until we can release Frank Perry's Last Summer, not the butchered version that ended up getting cut to an R and so forth and so on. And I've got 2 archivists arriving here this week to help go through the vault so that we can hopefully go through the pieces to find the pieces we need to get that out. And every summer that goes by that we haven't put out Last Summer, I feel depressed.
Well, it's going to be worth the wait, I'm sure.
That's what we're hoping to do. We're only aspiring for bigger and better and more dedication to what consumers want. That's what we're here for.
Wow. Well, and the fans appreciate it. I mean, that I know just from our listeners alone. It's just magnificent.
Well, and as one of your listeners, I got to say I love your podcast, and was very distressed this week that you skipped a week, but we skipped a week of releases too.
Well, that's we're back in the saddle, and we're back up to it. So I just cannot thank you enough, George. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
It has been a real pleasure. Keep up the good work, because the better the work that you do, the easier our job is. So
my pleasure, and I thank you for all the kind words. And I'll be listening to your show this week and weeks thereafter.
Perfect.
Thanks so much.
Bye
bye.
Bye bye.
George Feltenstein, everybody.
That's great. You know what?
He's great.
Here's the thing. You know, you want to know. Sometimes you want to know how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
You want to know how they decide what to put out, how they put it out, the business of putting it out, the creative aspects of putting it out, and it just really goes to show that those guys really have their head on straight. That's one of the best companies out there.
Great. Really great stuff. All right, and with that, we are done. We'll see you next week.